welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a look at a really major global story that broke this week. The passing of Pope Francis.
Yeah, the Vatican announced his death on Monday.
And it's just an event with such profound implications for, what, over 1 billion Catholics worldwide?
Easily, yeah. The announcement actually came from Cardinal Kevin Farrell.
Yep.
He shared the news, said Pope Francis had returned to the House of the Father at 7:35 a.m. Monday morning.
And Cardinal Farrell, he's Irish-American, right?
That's right. And interestingly, because of his role, he now becomes the Vatican's sort of de facto administrator during this interim period.
So he's running things for now?
Essentially, yes. The day-to-day stuff. Think of him as a temporary caretaker, making sure the basic functions continue.
Wow. Okay. And the reaction, I saw news reports showing people gathering pretty quickly in St. Peter's Square.
Mm-hmm. It seems it caught quite a few people off guard.
Yeah, I read one account, Marco Volpi, who said he'd just seen the Pope the day before giving the Easter blessing.
Right. It just shows how quickly things can change, even though, well, we all knew about his recent health scare.
It does. It really does.
And that brings us to the core question for the church now, doesn't it?
Which way does it go?
Exactly. Will the cardinals lean towards someone who continues Francis's approach that focuses on inclusivity, global issues?
Or do they perhaps pivot back to a more maybe traditional path?
That's the big question. So our mission today really is to unpack Pope Francis's impact based on what we know and think about what his passing means going forward.
Okay, good plan. So let's start with the man himself, Jorge Mario Bergoglio.
Right. Born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, back in December 1936. So he passed away at 88.
Made history in 2013. First pope from Latin America.
Huge. And the first Jesuit pope as well.
Right, that too. And it's fair to say his papacy was really marked by stances that many saw as more progressive, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Particularly being the first from Latin America, that background likely gave him maybe a different perspective. Well, coming from a region with significant poverty, social justice struggles, it probably informed his constant focus on the poor, the marginalized, maybe more directly than popes from Europe.
Yeah, makes sense. And the Jesuit influence.
Yeah, the Jesuits, they have this long tradition of intellectual engagement, focusing on how faith interacts with the modern world.
Okay.
So that might explain some of his willingness to tackle really contemporary challenges like climate change head on.
Yeah, definitely saw him championing climate change, migrants' rights, inclusivity.
They're very prominent themes.
And it's quite striking, even in his last days, despite being clearly frail, we heard about that really serious bout of pneumonia recently.
Life-threatening, they said.
Right. He was still making public appearances. That Easter blessing, meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance.
It's remarkable looking back, especially when you factor in that earlier hospital stay, 38 days?
Yeah, back in February, March. Near-death experiences mentioned then, too.
So those final appearances, his visit to St. Peter's Basilica in a wheelchair, the prison visit, Easter, you almost wonder if they were sort of farewells.
It does feel that way in hindsight, doesn't it?
Yeah. So while the timing so soon after Easter felt abrupt, his passing wasn't entirely unexpected given everything he'd been through health-wise.
Okay, so let's shift a bit and delve into some of his key initiatives. His legacy.
Sure.
It seems clear he worked hard to make the church feel more welcoming, more inclusive.
Definitely. I mean, think about his comments on LGBTQ individuals, that famous "who am I to judge" line.
That really resonated with a lot of people, inside and outside the church.
It did. And also appointing women to some pretty significant roles within the Vatican hierarchy.
That was a noticeable step towards gender equality.
It felt like he was genuinely trying to navigate, the complexities of the modern world while still holding on to core church teachings.
Not an easy balance.
Not at all. But his willingness to just engage in dialogue, even on really sensitive topics that stirred up controversy, that was a real hallmark, I think.
And these actions, they sent signals, didn't they, about wanting to connect with how people actually live today.
For sure. And beyond that, he also tackled some really tough internal issues.
Like the sexual abuse crisis.
Yes, and the ongoing efforts towards financial transparency, cleaning up the Vatican's finances.
How much progress was made there? The reports seem mixed.
Yeah, it's generally seen as progress made, but also an acknowledgement that, significant challenges definitely remained. It's a huge undertaking.
Understandable. And on the world stage, he seemed to align pretty early on with other leaders on big issues.
Oh, absolutely. Climate change, as we mentioned.
Right.
Migrants' rights, income inequality. He found common ground there, and it gave him this really powerful international platform.
His voice on climate action in particular seemed very strong.
Hugely impactful. That 2015 encyclical, Laudato Si', was genuinely groundbreaking. It put environmental responsibility squarely on the global agenda from a major religious leader.
Yeah.
And he didn't let up. He followed up again in 2023, stressing the urgency.
And leaders noticed. I saw statements from Antonio Guterres at the UN.
Yes, and Simon Steele at UN Climate Change. Both specifically credited him with raising awareness and contributing to the momentum for the Paris Agreement.
So it wasn't just talk. It had real-world connections.
It seems so. And it wasn't just about these big global policies either. There was this constant theme of reaching out to the margins.
Going to the edges, as he often put it.
Exactly. We're seeing tributes pour in from leaders across Africa, for instance.
Praising his work on what specifically?
His solidarity with people affected by conflict, by poverty, his efforts towards peace, especially noted in places like the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and his defense of migrants' rights, too. Even the Egyptian president mentioned his comments supporting the Palestinian cause. It shows that wide focus.
So he wasn't just seen as a religious leader, but as a significant moral voice globally.
I think that's a very fair assessment. He really managed to connect with a lot of different people and amplify voices that often go unheard. That's a big part of his legacy.
Okay, so now the focus shifts.
Yeah.
What happens next? The transition of power.
Right.
Cardinal Kevin Farrell steps into this role of Camerlengo. Sounds important, if temporary.
It is crucial in this period. It's called the Apostolic Seat Vacans, basically. The Pope's seat is vacant.
Okay.
So as Camerlengo, Cardinal Farrell has specific duties. He's the one who officially confirms and announces the Pope's death.
Got it.
He oversees the Vatican's day-to-day operations, like we said, but, and this is key, he can't make major policy decisions. No new directions set.
So maintaining the status quo.
Pretty much. He's also involved in formally certifying the death, sealing the Pope's private apartment, the Casa Santa Marta, and that seems likely. The Vatican indicated a public viewing in St. Peter's Basilica could start relatively soon, maybe Wednesday morning, but that depends on the College of Cardinals.
Okay. And after the viewing?
The funeral and burial usually follow within about 4 to 6 days after the death.
And then all eyes turn to the conclave.
Precisely. That's the big event.
How does that work, timing-wise? When do they gather?
The Dean of the College of Cardinals has the job of summoning all the cardinals to Rome. This usually happens within 15 to 20 days of the Pope's death.
And that gathering is the conclave?
Yes, it's that closed meeting held in the Sistine Chapel where they vote to elect the next Pope. Highly ritualized, very secretive.
Who actually gets to vote? I know not all cardinals do.
Correct. The entire College of Cardinals has, I think, 252 members right now.
Okay.
But only those under the age of 80 are eligible to vote in the conclave. Currently, that's 135 cardinals.
And Pope Francis appointed quite a few of those, didn't he?
He appointed a significant majority, actually. And he often chose cardinals, prelates, who seemed to share his priorities.
Such as?
Focus on poverty, helping the marginalized, climate change, dialogue, that kind of thing. Bishops from the global south, places often overlooked previously.
Which brings us right back to that central question, doesn't it?
It really does.
This critical decision
Right.
facing those 135 cardinals.
Do they continue down the path Francis charted, that more welcoming, globally engaged, perhaps pastorally focused approach?
Or do they feel the church needs maybe a more doctrinaire leader? A return to more traditional emphases?
That's the fundamental choice. And it's a huge one, impacting the leadership of, well, over 1 billion Catholics. It's a significant moment of transition.
And it's clear there isn't universal agreement on Francis's legacy within the church itself.
Not at all. He inspired immense devotion and loyalty from many, many Catholics. But he also faced, let's be honest, quite a bit of backlash and criticism from more traditionalist or conservative corners.
So the cardinals have to weigh all that up.
They have to navigate these complex, sometimes deeply conflicting views and priorities as they discern who should lead the church next.
So wrapping this up, our deep dive today looking at the passing of Pope Francis, it really marks the end of a very significant papacy.
Absolutely. His push for inclusivity, his vocal stance on climate change, that constant focus on the marginalized, these have definitely left a mark.
And now this complex, ancient process of selecting his successor gets underway.
And that choice the cardinals face about the future direction of the Catholic Church, it feels like a genuinely pivotal moment. the consequences could be really far-reaching.
Yeah, and just the sheer scale of the global reaction, the tributes we've seen from religious leaders, political figures, ordinary people.
It really underscores the impact he had, doesn't it? Far beyond the Catholic Church, on people of all sorts of backgrounds and beliefs.
It does.
Which maybe leaves us with a final thought for our listeners to ponder. Think about the challenge any leader faces, especially in a huge global institution like the church. How do you balance centuries of tradition with the really urgent needs and complexities of the modern world?
It's a massive balancing act.
It really is. So maybe reflect on what parts of Pope Francis's approach do you think will stick? What will have the most lasting impact? And looking ahead, what possibilities or maybe even challenges do you see for the Catholic Church as it navigates this major transition?
Definitely a lot to think about there.